What text messages mean to an anxious person? You're mad at me. You're mad at me. You're mad at me. You are writing a dissertation of why you are mad at me. See, this one's a little tricky. So at first glance, it seems like you're not mad at me, but based on that period, I know that you're mad at me. Everyone is dead, and also you're mad at me.
Okay, so that is still my default, is to be like read into everything so much and assume, like overanalyze text and stuff like that. For someone like me, it is actually really exhausting for people to deal with people like us because we assume that you're always mad at us. And I would argue that most people who that's their default, I wouldn't say it's like being an anxious person. I would say it's usually rooted in something, some sort of like, I don't know, maybe you grew up with a narcissist or an abusive family, or there's something that anxious voice thinking that you are never safe, that doesn't just come out of nowhere, pretty sure. And I remember like I hated that I did this, that I just read into everything so much, but I didn't know how to change it. And I also didn't quite realize how exhausting it is to deal with people like me who do that until I was, have been on the receiving end of that. And that's when I was like, man, I got to stop this. I remember I was working, when I worked in the film industry, and I was made like the head PA, a production assistant. It was like the key PA, I think is what you call it. So I had a bunch of other people who I was in charge of all the PAs on set. And there was this one girl who was like this. And I remember being like, oh my God, is that what I do to everybody? I'm pretty sure that's what I do. Although I had learned to kind of keep that anxiousness under control. I wouldn't necessarily verbalize it, but it's how I always felt. And I remember just being like, okay, I need you to do this and you to do this. Can you go, watch that door? Because when you're a PA, you do like the weirdest, dumbest stuff that's so boring. Boring and exhausting at the same time, and you also don't get paid very well. And I remember her just being like, well, yeah, but like, I was watching the door. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I just need you to keep watching the door. And she was like, but I didn't do anything wrong. And I'm like, no, I didn't say you did. And I don't remember the exact, I just remember we went back and forth and I was like, I had to do everything in my power not to just be like, stop, not to yell at her, because she was like treating me like I'm a monster. And I'm literally just being like, I was trying to just give everybody their assignment, but she kept coming back at me like I'm just criticizing her. And there was no criticism there. And I started to realize, I'm like, God, this is why people get frustrated with me sometimes, is because I need so much reassurance. Not anymore, but I used to need so much reassurance that you weren't pissed at me, that there wasn't a problem, that it's pretty exhausting. So I have a lot of compassion for people who that's their default. They assume that there's always a problem, that someone's always mad at them, that they've done something, because I know where it comes from. It's usually something that they haven't quite, had enough healing around. And so they're projecting this on everybody. And I remember once one of my mentors was like, I showed up late at her place because the subway got stalled or something. And I was so afraid that she was pissed at me that I was like, oh my God. She was like, it's okay. And I'm like, yeah, but I know, but la. She's like, it's okay. And I'm like, yeah, but and she was like, Melanie, it's okay. And then the part of me that just gets yelled at is like, well, now she's yelling at me, but it's like she's trying to like throw water on my face, being like, stop, there's not a problem. And I remember in that same visit, I was trying to find some papers because I wanted to show her something I'd done, and I couldn't find it. And I was like, sorry. I was like, I know they're here. Sorry. And she's chill. She's just waiting. But I assume that she's like anxiously waiting and getting madder. But she's not. And I keep saying, I'm sorry. I know they're here. I'm sorry. And finally, this woman's very wise. She was like this 73-year-old Brooklynite. And she was the one who made it crystal clear for me in this moment. She was like, do you realize that whatever voice that is in your head that assumes everybody else is out to get you, that voice is, you've got like a little dictator in your head. She even named him. She named him Sam. Just so that this voice would have a name when it would crop up, and she'd be like, there's Sam. And she was like, do you realize that I'm just sitting here I am chill. There's no problem. But you are so anxious, and you're that little dictator is like, uh-oh, she's getting mad. She's getting mad. And so then you start projecting that little dictator onto me. And you make me feel like I'm a monster doing something, and I'm not doing anything. I'm literally just sitting here. I'm not sending any kind of vibe your way like, God, I'm chill. It's a beautiful Saturday. I am at peace in the world right now. You are not, though. And so you are so anxious and keep apologizing and apologizing and apologizing. And it's pretty exhausting. And so she basically helped me realize that I need to get, not control of, but really need to pay attention to this Sam voice in my head. This voice that is constantly assuming that I'm in trouble for something. This voice that thinks that everything is my fault. She was like, do you realize if there was a baby crying 4 blocks away and you heard that baby crying, even here in this apartment, you would still find a way to blame yourself for that baby. That baby doesn't even know you exist. But your little voice, you have this dictator in you that is just like, it's your fault, and it just never lets up. It never stops criticizing you. It never lets you rest. And because that voice dominates your headspace, you project that voice onto everyone around you. And it's tiring. And we try to tell you, no, everything's fine, but you aren't listening. Because that voice has got the bullhorn being like, no, everything's not okay. You need to make peace with that voice. That's not been easy. But one of the things that I started to do in all relationships, but especially when I was dating, like started dating seriously, which was many years later, was I started to realize that to not text back. That whenever I was very anxious because of something, or I was afraid someone was mad at me, the first thing I needed to not do is like text them that this was a me problem. Unless they seriously were being passive aggressive and whatever. And I grew up in the South, around white Southern women, where there's the language, everything is about decoding something. And that's what I love about France. I'm not saying that passive aggressive people don't exist here. This is what I loved about New York too. People were just more straightforward. I didn't have to read between the lines. And so here, someone will just say, you're like, oh, you want to do this? They'll be like, no. Whereas like back in the South, if you said, you want to do this? They'll be like, well. And so that's no, but they won't say no. So I was always having to like decode everything. And so it's so much easier when you're around people who are very direct. My best friend Liz was very direct, so I had a lot of healing around things because she was the one who made me realize that I was constantly projecting this stuff onto her and that there was no problem. She's in a bad mood when she doesn't have coffee in the morning. And every single morning I'm like, oh my God, she hates me. She doesn't want to be my friend anymore. She'd be like, no, Melanie, I've already told you. Don't talk to me before I have coffee. I'm sorry, but it's just, I can't talk to people before I have coffee. She had to remind me of that many times because every day I'm like, she's mad. So she helped me realize how much I need to work on this voice and stop making it everyone else's problem. But she was always very, very thoughtful and kind in giving me that feedback, by the way. And my husband's the same way. He's very, very direct. I never have to live in fear of him being mad at me and not telling me. If I'm afraid that he's mad about something and I ask, he'll be like, no, babe, I would tell you. I just, haven't had anything to eat yet. Or, I had nightmares last night. He's a Pisces. His dreams affect him a lot. I don't even remember my dreams, but apparently Pisces have intense, I don't know, whatever. I'm not into all that stuff, but if he has nightmares, it takes him a couple hours in the morning to get over them. But anyway, surrounding myself with people who are very direct, who are not afraid to tell me the truth, but are always very thoughtful and kind when telling me the truth, that has been very, very healing. But the world is not full of those people. There's a lot of people who are like me, who were raised to be more passive aggressive. I'm more direct now. And so I realized that one of my biggest responsibilities to not sabotage relationships and also just not exhaust people with my projection and making everyone into a bear. Yeah, don't hurt me, was to really learn to go and breathe and really calm myself down when I have these panic attacks because someone puts a period after a word in a text. God, y'all, this Sam voice in my head, it never lets up.